And our time is 12:05 on this Wednesday afternoon. John Harper here, and happy to introduce to you now the gentleman who goes through life with the music of your life. Nonetheless, it is time for Kerry Fink. And Kerry, of course, is the executive director as well of Helping Seniors of Brevard. Good afternoon, Kerry.
Hey, thank you, John Harper. Yeah, it is the music of your life. And, our guest today is none other than board-certified elder law attorney Bill Johnson. And, it's funny because both of us, outside of the work that we do, are like big music fans. So we're always trading emails back and forth. I was just at this concert and I was just at that concert, and it's always fun. And so that is the music of your life, as it were. So welcome to Helping Seniors Radio. Here we are. We gather every Wednesday lunchtime on 90.3 FM WEJF. Welcome if you're listening to us online, as a growing number do every week, WEJF.net. And also hello to those of you who catch this as a podcast later. However, I would like to start the show with a time-sensitive announcement. So if you're listening to this on today, which I believe is the 4th of October, and it's just afternoon, I want to tell you this on the year 2023 is that today is the last day that you can get your Helping Seniors car raffle tickets and have the tickets returned to you by mail. It's not the last day you can get the tickets. I'll explain this in a moment. But today is the deadline. If you place your order today, then they will mail you your tickets and you'll have them, and you'll be able to skip lines when you come to the American Muscle Car Museum Saturday evening, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m., when the 7th annual Helping Seniors car raffle drawing is on. So how do you get a ticket? And you should do that today if you can. You could call Nancy or Karen on the Helping Seniors information line. I'll give you a second to grab a pencil so you can jot a number down that I'll give you here. But that's a great number that you need anyway, just whether you need help or questions about things that pertain to being a senior. Last year, collectively, we served 5,400 plus phone calls from seniors and their families about everything: housing, legal, medical, transportation, you name it, we got the calls. And of course, this week we're getting a lot of calls about the car raffle, simply because people are excited and they want to get there. So if you want to jot this number down, this is how you could get your car raffle tickets today. One ticket is a $25 and 5 tickets is a $100 donation. So you're going to call Nancy or Karen at 321-473-7770. 321-473-7770. You can also get your tickets at helpingseniors.carraffle.com safely and securely online. But the key is, if you get them before close of business today, then Marty Upton, who's in our business office, she will mail you your tickets. If you get them tomorrow or Friday, you're going to be on the will call list. You can still get them, but you're going to be on the will call list, and you'll come by the museum on Saturday evening, and they'll find you on the list and make sure you're set to come in. And another popular question we get asked a lot, because it seems to me like a lot of times each ticket, let me restate this, each ticket is admit one to the museum. So what happens is a lot of people get down to showtime, if you will, and they hop in their car to come to the Muscle Car Museum, and they decided they were going to invite their friends or neighbors. So they may come up short tickets. The nice thing is, yes, you can get tickets at the door. There's usually a line, which is why we suggest it's a good idea if you can get ahead of that and get your tickets. And Bill Johnson, we talked about this for a number of years. This is the 7th annual car raffle. You've usually stood by the Mazda, but when I asked you at the beginning of this cycle, because remember, folks, you choose the car you win when we pull your winning ticket. So you could choose a 2023 Dodge Challenger, 2023 Chevrolet Camaro, 2023 Mazda Miata convertible, 2023 Kia Sportage, or because AJ has now added a Mitsubishi dealership, you could choose a 2023 Outlander. And Bill surprised me earlier this year when I asked him. I said, well, Bill, are you up for the Mazda again in this year's raffle? And he said,
no, the Camaro.
And because they're saying to us, Bill, that this is the last year for the Dodge Challenger. In fact, we've had a couple. They give us cars and we get to go out to car shows and things like that, and they stick like a little name, like I don't know if you call it a label or some kind of a little thing under the hood, and it says this is to commemorate the last year of Dodge Challenger. So it's hard for me to believe that that isn't a serious threat, if you will. Now, what they told me about the Camaro is that they believe there's going to be a 2024 edition of the Camaro, but that will be the end. And remember, when they say 2024, that means, you start ordering in like September, and it has to be finished by like June of next year, because that's when they start rolling out 2025s. And so what they were telling me over at Boniface Hires is we probably may be able to come up with a Camaro for next year, but it's not like this year where the winner will be able to choose the color and all those things. It'll be whatever one that they pick and set aside for us in the car raffle. So it'd be a very limited edition. So, Bill, I think you're making a wise choice to go for the Camaro, because if you did like Gail McGinnis, who won last year, she's local to Brevard County, and she was there the night of the drawing. It was so much fun. She got up on stage. Mark Pylock, the owner of the museum, asked her, said, "What car do you want?" And she goes, "I want Camaro." And she actually brought it out when we were out at the Automotive August Chevrolet celebration. Beautiful car. And she loves the car. In fact, Bill, you'll appreciate, she got a license plate that spells out IEY, the number 1, and IT. So the back of her license, if you see this car driving around, it says, "I want it." That's Gail in her little. It has some fancy name, but she got a special paint job on it because that's what she wanted, and they customized it out for her. And if you're the winner, you would have that same opportunity. So get your tickets today, 321-473-7770, and or call us or go online, helpingseniorscarraffle.com. Bill, you've been out there. You've seen the crowds, right?
Yep. It's a huge crowd for the drawing and for the museum.
Yeah, and it looks to be like, although every time I talk about the crowds, a couple of the folks on our board say, "Kerry, you make it sound like it's crowded," and it is crowded when they call everybody together for the number. But literally, Bill, that place is so big as you're walking around, just enjoying looking at Mark Pylock's amazing collection. He told me they've got like 435 cars inventoried now. Unbelievable. So even if you were there last year, you've missed a growing part of the collection. It's just a great night there. Get your tickets, bring your family and friends. Each ticket is admit one, helpingseniorscarraffle.com. So with that, let's move. We're going to have a really interesting discussion, because when I was trading emails with Bill, I said, "What would you like to talk about?" He shot back, well, here's 2 cases. I think one was Olmsted. Am I saying that right?
Olmsted, yeah.
And then the other was Gemmo. And I thought, well, that's pretty esoteric. An attorney would remember cases by name. A normal person like you or I might not. But he said, no, this has to do with some things that you need to know with Medicaid and Medicare. And as we were talking just before the show, I think you're going to get a lot out of this, because as soon as I started asking about him a couple of questions about some of the things we're going to cover today, I'm like, I had no idea. So I would categorize what we're going to talk about today as things that you need to know, because this could very well affect your rights. I was sharing with Bill before the radio show a personal story in our own family where we were told something at one facility. Bill says, "Well, that's not probably technically correct," as it had to do with my mother in terms of some services that she needed at that facility. And she said, "I think, and so the problem is you as a person going into the facility trying to help your loved one, or if you're the loved one yourself, you need to know your rights." We've been doing a thing, Bill, as you know, called the Palm Bay Senior Renters Workshop, and it's together with the Florida Bar. They have the thing called the Florida Eviction Prevention Workshop. And the thing is that people don't know what their rights as a renter are. And this is very much the same thing we're going to talk about today. So this is your show, Bill. Where do you want to start?
Well, let's start with Medicaid in Florida. In Florida, you can receive care or services under Medicaid at a nursing home, an assisted living, or in your house.
Aha.
We're one of the few states that offer that. If you go to Georgia or Alabama, the only place you can get Medicaid services is at a nursing home. So the Olmsted case deals with, it's 1999, so
wow, it's not
24
new.
years ago. But basically, it says they cannot discriminate against you based on where you want to receive your care. So if you are on the Florida Home and Community-Based Services waiver, which is the one that pays for care at home or in assisted living, and you need more care, they cannot force you to go from your house to assisted living or from your house to a nursing home. They would have to deliver the care to you at home. So, and the case actually involves developmentally disabled individuals who were being plucked from their homes and put in these group homes to get the assistance. And they're like, no, you can't do that.
Wow.
You have to bring, why are we ripping them from their families?
Sure.
Everybody wants to stay at home and be surrounded by their loved ones. And so that's what the Olmsted case says. If you want to stay home, you can stay home and get services. And it has worked pretty well. I mean, I'm hearing around the state that some people who are on the home and community-based services are getting 24/7 care at their house.
Wow.
Which is, what everybody says they want. Nobody wants to have to go to the nursing home or to the assisted living. Now, there is a catch. For home and community-based services, you have to get on a waiting list. And to get on the waiting list, to be eligible, you must meet one of 5 different medical tests based on your ability to do activities of daily living, which are walking, transferring, bathing, dressing, eating, and toileting. If you need some help with 5 or more of those, you're eligible. Or if you need some help with 4 or more and supervision of medications, you're eligible. If you have a diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease or dementia and require some help with 3 or more activities of daily living, you're eligible.
Wow.
If you require total help with 2 or more activities of daily living, you're eligible. Or if you have a degenerative or chronic condition requiring daily nursing services, you're eligible. And then if you meet the eligibility, then based on the phone interview, they will give you a ranking from 1 through 5, and you go on a waiting list. The 5s are at the top, then the 4s, 3s, 2s, 1s. There's about 50,000 people on the waiting list. However, if you're a 5, the highest ranking, being the most needy, then you would probably be on that list about 6 months.
Wow. Well, even as we were rolling into this conversation before the radio show, the thing that I was asking, I said, I didn't even, and I'm going to assume I'm not terribly different from the average person out there, maybe, but the point is, I didn't even really know that you could get help with staying at home. I thought for most of us, at a certain point in time, if we're able to get Medicaid qualified, then we're pretty much, having to find a facility that would make that work. And so there was a whole thing that you started to use words like Medicaid waiver and things like that. And I thought, before we dive too deep into it, it might be good to just zip it back a notch and ask a little bit. So we've had radio shows before. We've talked about Medicare does not pay for your nursing home or things like that. So you really do have to be sure that you're Medicaid qualified. Am I saying that right, Bill?
Correct.
And then, so there's a whole process, and that's a thing that you guys help people with, right? I mean, they come
Correct.
to you and you make sure, because there's all these look-back periods, there's all these kind of things people need to know about. You can't just give away your house to a kid or things like that, right?
Correct. There's a 5-year look-back for Medicaid.
Yeah, so you have to get this right on the front side. But then if you do that, it sounds to me like potentially you could have some really helpful help at a time you desperately need it.
Correct. And we always tell people, when you get called off the waiting list, you have to do the income and asset verification with Medicaid. And then you pick one of 4 different companies. That's how many we have in our district. It's Humana, Aetna, Sunshine Health, and Staywell. And you pick one of those companies, and then they send out a case manager, and that case manager assesses how much care you need.
Right.
I think it's always good to have something from your own physician saying how much care you need,
right,
in case you don't agree with what the case manager
says.
That
makes sense, right?
Because they work for the company, they don't
right.
work for you. And then at some point you have some agreed upon number of hours of care coming in. If that doesn't work out for you, you can always appeal that and get more care. But they do offer a whole range of services: homemaker companion, medical, occupational therapy, physical therapy. All those kinds of things can be done at your house.
Well, and then what you're saying is, and this is where, Bill, we've talked about this so often. Joe Steckler, our president and founder, he's always talked about from day one the need for an aging plan, which is, kind of like your roadmap for the things that you may run across, as you add, as I've heard it said before, trips around the sun. And so there's that aspect, but we've kind of jokingly or smilingly euphemistically referred to it as getting your ducks in a row. But as we go through this, we learn that there's so many nuances and things you need to know, which is why you really need somebody who specializes and is kind of an expert in this, because I don't think prior to today I was really savvy that, you could actually have a choice. I may want to have services in my home versus, versus being required to move to a facility. And I think that's the point of the case that you were referencing is, like, if you're established there, they can't at some point say, well, now you have to. You've gotten to the point where you have to go, right?
Right, exactly.
So this is once again a lesson for all of us in getting our ducks in a row and trying to sort through this. But I mean, for families, that would sound like it would be like almost an answer to prayer if you could get into that. Because most people, I think, say I would prefer to be at home and have help at home. Why do you think more people don't do this? They just don't understand, or they are not willing to take the time to?
Well, some people can't wait.
Okay,
so
right,
they need
right.
care immediately. That's
Right.
why they go right from the hospital to the nursing home.
Sure.
Because they can't get on a list and wait 6 months, for care to come.
So just as an aside, what if that happened? It was an emergency. Mom had to go to the hospital. It's not safe for her to come home. But could maybe the other loved one say, no, we really would love to have mom back home? Can you go from that side of it back home after you clear waiting list and all that?
You can. In fact, if you get on Medicaid while you're at the nursing home and you're at the nursing home for at least 60 days, you actually skip the waiting list.
Oh.
and you move to the front of the line and you get the services at home because it's cheaper.
Right. So theoretically, that wouldn't be like the most terrible thing, but it's still going to be a lesson to all of us about you got to get your ducks in a row and have your paperwork right, because otherwise you're going to get tripped up in all that look back and all those other financial qualification kind of things, right?
Correct.
So you really got to be careful how you set all this up. But that's interesting. So you could, if the situation required it, be in that skilled nursing facility, but still have an eye towards let's get mom or dad home, right?
Correct.
Wow. So and then what if your long-term plan is say, no, I really like it home. I think I'm okay now. I just want to get things organized in case this comes at me. That's really the reason why you would sit down, maybe go to one of, I guess it usually starts with one of your seminars. But then maybe sit down and have an opportunity to speak with you directly and say, well, here's where I'm at. This is what I want to do, because that Medicaid planning part of it seems so critical to getting this right.
Well, it gives you peace of mind,
Yeah.
so that like if something happens, I call it pre-planning.
Right.
If something happens, we'll be able to get you on Medicaid to cover the costs of the long-term care. I would tell you the vast majority of what we do is crisis planning, however.
Right.
People don't know, and then all of a sudden they're facing a $13,000 nursing home bill.
Yeah, we've had this conversation many times about the fact that, I think it's really an interesting dynamic that you spend a lot of time educating people about things to not do that would save them not small amounts. We're talking tens of thousands. I mean, we've been through the hazards of not getting the paperwork right and somebody having to go into guardianship. We've been through all these conversations about, if you just say, oh, I'm just going to gift the house to my kids, or I'm going to put my daughter on the bank account, or different things like that. all that affects, your Medicaid eligibility because of these rules. So you make some move that you thought was right, but it could end up costing you tens of thousands of dollars to straighten out. Whereas if you would just go and sit down with you early on, it's a pittance compared to that. Correct. And you don't really make, as a law practice, I'm sure that's not really your bread and butter, but it's interesting that you would spend so much time trying to get people to get this done the right way.
Right.
So if, I know you guys do a lot of seminars at like One Senior Place, and hopefully we'll get you started on some seminars over also now, that's Vieira area. And then, of course, we in our little Senior Resource Center Brevard efforts are located in the beautiful Omni Healthcare right there, building right there on the campus, the medical campus there, downtown Melbourne. So maybe that may be more convenient for some people. But I know that you regularly do these education seminars. And then I think if somebody is there, there's an opportunity to talk to you or maybe set up a time afterwards once they've learned a little bit more and say, well, here's my specific situation.
Yep, exactly.
So if they want to get information about that, I know you have a great website called FloridaElderLaw.net. I'm never good about remembering your phone number, but so how does that work?
My phone number is 321-253-1667.
Okay, so we've been having this conversation, and I hope you've gleaned I think there was some real wisdom here about some of the things that we've been mentioning, because I for one, was not aware that you might be able to kind of age in place, which is, I think, what a lot of folks would want to do, and possibly have it work out where Medicare is able to not Medicare. See, I did it. It's supposed to be Medicaid is able to help you through these soups. And I got to tell you, Bill, a lot of times when Nancy gets these calls I'm talking about Nancy Deerdorf, who is our operations director. She's over everything that is connected with calls coming in on the senior information helpline. And, she gets the calls and people don't understand Medicare from Medicaid. And I think most of us don't, or we think Medicare is going to cover this stuff, and then rudely we find out it's no help at all in these long-term situations.
Right, and it looks like my next seminar on Medicaid at One Senior Place is October 26th at 10 a.m.
So that's coming up in a few short weeks, and I would encourage you. So if they want to sign up, they could call One Senior Place, right?
Correct.
Or they could call your office, and I'm sure you could get them on
Correct.
The list. And by the way, while we're talking about your website, FloridaElderLaw.net, you have a great resource there where you've compiled a lot of this information, and it's a little book you can just download.
Correct. You can download it right off the website.
Yeah. So we're about at our mid-show break, Bill. We're going to talk about this other case, the Gemma case, and I think you're going to find as much meat on the bone there as hopefully you got out of the first half. So we'll be right back, second half of Helping Seniors Radio.
12:33 right now is the time on this Wednesday afternoon. You're listening to Helping Seniors of Brevard. And let's get back with the second half of the show right now with your host and the executive director, by the way, of Helping Seniors of Brevard, Kerry Fink. Kerry?
Hey, thanks, John Harper. Again, welcome back to Lunchtime Wednesday right here on 90.3 WEJF FM. And thanks to those of you listening online, wherever you may be, at WEJF.net. And thanks for hanging in the podcast as well. We're having a really, really good conversation with board-certified elder law attorney Bill Johnson of Law Office, William A. Johnson, PA. And we were just talking about, if you were there for the first part of the show, I think you learned a lot. I know I did about some things I just did not know that were resources that would be available to you. When Joe Steckler, our president and founder, organized Helping Seniors, we're now in our 13th year of service. Joe is the guy who created the Joe's Clubs and everything, got everything rolling with Brevard Alzheimer's Foundation. Couldn't stay retired, so he decided, actually what he said when I met him all those years ago, he said, Kerry, I've learned a lot about what seniors with memory care issues need. But he said, I've also discovered that so many families have issues that go well beyond just memory issues. We need an organization that can try to help there. And that's what his idea was in creating Helping Seniors of Brevard when all that started. And one of the things along the way we talked about in the first half of the show was making an aging plan or trying to get some organization of things that could help you. And as a tiny, tiny, tiny little organization. We're a few $100,000 a year that keeps everything running for 5,400 calls being served. And we found out, by the way, people say, "Are you guys like a referral line, like maybe like 211?" I said, "No, we did the math. We found out that it took about 7.2 calls on average to resolve a situation. So there's some stats. We really do get involved. But one of the things that we've learned along the way is that you have to have really good information to make things go. And so we were just talking about in the first half this case that Bill called was named the Olmstead case, but it has a lot to do with Medicaid and you being able to get maybe some help at the exact time that you might need it at home. And I was saying to Bill, I said, this is something that I think even our team would benefit from learning more about. And he said, you should invite them to the seminar we're going to have on October 26th at One Senior Place, because a lot of this is going to go more into detail. So again, if you want to be smart, like hopefully we're going to try to be smart and be there for that, you could go to One Senior Place because they'll help you sign up. Or again, you could call Bill's office. It's free, right? I mean, there's no charge.
Correct.
Yeah. And so how do you call you?
321-253-1667.
Yeah. This information, and the point that I wanted to make about us being a small organization, I am surprised how effective we can be. I always call us, Joe's heard me say this for years. I feel like we're the little engine that could, because a lot of times it's having the right information. It's not always having, bushels of money that solve the problem. You can have bushels of money and not know where to go. As we see every day, people move in, from states up north and they don't know where to begin. They may have the resources, but that's why they call us. They say, I don't know who you call and trust in this area about this stuff. And
correct. You're right.
We've had this conversation about people who move in and they may have had a jam up, jelly tight elder law firm, up in, I don't know, I'm picking on New York State or Illinois or someplace, do all their paperwork, but then they get down here in Florida and it's still different rules that they need to make sure that the paperwork is going to do what they thought.
You're exactly right.
So that's another point. Okay, so we have belabored the point about things that you can do that might be very beneficial for you to know about as it pertains to Medicaid. And so I want to encourage you, if you missed the first half of the show, this is why we put everything out on Facebook. We put it out on YouTube. We put it out on the helpingseniors.brevard.org website. We put this out as a podcast, so you can go to Alexa or, hey, Apple, play me this, or just tell them you want to hear Helping Seniors. And tell them you want to hear the episode with Bill Johnson talking about Medicaid and Medicare, and so. But in the second half of the show, we're gonna tackle a different side. This is a different case you called the Gemma case.
Gemmo.
Eventually, I'm going to get this right before we get through this. So the important thing for us is not necessarily the name of the case, but it is how it could help us in the Medicare world. So let's jump in from there.
Yes. So the first half of the hour, we were talking about Medicaid. And now we're going to switch gears and talk about Medicare. Mm-hmm. So say somebody has a stroke and is taken to the hospital, mm-hmm. and they get stabilized and they have some weakness. And so generally you get discharged from the hospital to either a place like Sea Pines or mm-hmm. maybe a nursing home that offers rehabilitative services. Mm-hmm. And the general rule is that Medicare can pay up to 100% of days 1 through 20. And then after day 20, from 21 to 100, they have a copay. It's about $180 mm-hmm. That you're responsible for. The rest of the bill is picked up by Medicare. Now, the key here is you have to be doing rehab. Mm-hmm. So if you're not doing rehab or you can't do rehab, Medicare will shut off early, and then you're on your own on how you're going to pay for your long-term care. That's usually where Medicaid comes in.
Yeah, now we're back to the first half of the show.
Yeah. The Jimmo case is about the misapplication of when rehab stops. Mm-hmm. And here locally, there seems to be a very big disconnect because the old rule of thumb was once the patient didn't show any improvement, like they had plateaued, that would be when rehab would stop, which also meant that Medicare or your Advantage plan would stop as well. And then you're on your own on how to figure out how to pay the nursing home. Well, that little rule of thumb, that the patient's not improving, hasn't been the law in the country since 2013, which is when the Jimmo case came out.
Wow.
And the Jimmo case says, no, Medicare needs to keep paying even if the rehab just keeps the person the same or prevents them from getting worse.
Wow.
So you don't have to show that they're improving. You just have to show that it's keeping them at the level they are now, or it's helping prevent them from backsliding. And that is very important, especially if you have something like a stroke victim who can benefit from lots of rehab and make sure they're not sliding backwards. The Advantage plans seem to get this all wrong. They want you in and out of there as fast as possible because they don't want to pay for any of that. But so that's why you need to know the correct standard. And the correct standard is, even if it's just helping you stay the same or preventing you from backsliding, Medicare should still pay. And in fact, CMS has just done a whole workshop on this because people are still getting this wrong all over the country. And if you go to the cms.org website, they actually have a whole flyer devoted to the Jimmo case and what it means. And we found it sometimes useful to download that flyer and hand it to the nursing home and say, hey, you guys are aware that you're not using the right standard. And thus keeping our clients on Medicare paying the bill while they're doing rehab.
You know, I was saying to Bill when we were talking about the show, before the show, I said, well, this actually happened in our own family in a particular case. And at the time, so this was, let's go back, this is like 10 years ago, didn't really know even enough to know. And I remember they came to us about a family member and said, well, this person, we don't think that we're going to continue with physical therapy because we believe that this person has reached, is not showing, those were the exact words they used, was not showing signs of improvement, or that they had plateaued. I think they actually used that word. And so like, I remember asking them at the time, not knowing, this is why being armed with the correct knowledge and knowing your rights is so important. I did not know this at the time. So I just said, okay. And then the physical therapist said, but here's what you can do, because I know you want to help this person. You can come and borrow the weights or things, and if you want to go back there, and you can help do this, with your loved one, then that would be fine. And I thought, well, I didn't know any better, so I didn't know that it was even there. But this is in this particular case, Bill. So they were okay to keep the loved one there, but they were not going to do any more, at least for the 100 days or whatever it was. But they were not willing to do any more physical therapy. And I kept thinking, like, well, if this person is not able to do the physical therapy, they're probably going to go backwards. It's certainly not going to go forward, because every word I've ever heard from every physical therapist I've ever talked to says, if it moves, you need to move it.
Right, right. And you are exactly correct. And it sounds like in that case, they gave you the wrong standard.
Yeah. So if I'd had that little piece of paper downloaded and go, well, could you explain this one to me? I mean, it's not like you have to be a jerk about it, but you just go, could you explain how this is different than this?
And we also talked about what's the remedy. Well, right. The remedy is, if it's straight Medicare, you can appeal to Medicare to review the decision. If you're on an Advantage plan, you actually have to appeal to the Advantage plan first. Then if you don't like the way that turns out, then you can appeal to Medicare.
Yeah. Well, so it always comes back to so Nancy Deerdorf, our operation director, has this term. She says, "How do you know what you don't know?" Which this is a perfect discussion about all that. Because I guess it's a sad commentary, but you cannot always trust the person or the organization that you're dealing with, that they have your best interest 100% in mind. I think I don't think they're evil. I think they're just doing the best they can. But we were talking about this morning, with the shortage of healthcare workers and different things like that, there's probably a lot of pressure on these places to try to find any way that they can, that helps make what they're trying to do easier, even if it's not always 100% in the best interest of the person who's there.
Well, it's always a numbers game.
Yeah.
They have to try and keep their facility full, and they don't want to offend the insurance companies
Right.
who, help
Pay the
for
bill.
that.
Yeah.
Right. So, it's a matter of knowing what your rights are. Besides the appeal, you could always call in the long-term care ombudsman.
Yeah, and
their phone numbers are listed right at the front door of all these facilities.
So I was going to ask you that because we talked about that ahead of the show, and I said I don't think at that time I was aware of even what an ombudsman was or what they might be able to do. Should we take just half a moment and talk about that?
Sure. Ombudsman is actually a Swedish concept.
Yes.
And
being half Swedish, you would think I would have known that, but no.
And basically, it is a troubleshooter, for lack of a better word, who comes in and is invested on either side and comes in and tries to fix whatever the problem is, whether it's care or how it's getting paid or the insurance problem, all those kinds of things.
Yeah, it would have been fantastic had I known the term ombudsman back in the day. That would have probably been a great call to say, well, they're telling me this. I'm not sure. I don't know. Is this right? It would be great to just have, kind of somebody who navigates that territory, more frequently say, no. I mean, it would give me peace of mind even if they said, no, they're right. This is why. Then I'd be like, okay. Or like, well, no, they're being a little aggressive and they should take another look at this, whatever.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Wow. So, these are all the things, Bill, we don't know. And that's why, so much of what Helping Seniors at Brevard is about is trying to educate people. You're generous with your time, take a lot of time to do not only the radio shows, but you've done the TV shows. You'll write columns in our Helping Seniors News, and then you do all this community outreach where you're actually trying to train people or get them to consider the things that might really be beneficial for them. So again, on the 26th of October, you've got a session coming up that sounds like it would be really appropriate in light of everything we're talking about on the radio today.
It would, and it gives you the ins and outs of how Medicaid works.
And again, I'm going to, take three steps backwards because I think for so many of us, and again, I'm just thinking about the calls that Nancy often gets on the helpline. Many of us don't know the difference between Medicare and Medicaid. We tell people we have Medicaid, and we're not even close to that because of all the things that you were talking about, that you have to get, qualified financially. It has to be all these steps that you need to jump through. So again, when you take the time to learn about this, it's like a really cheap price to pay, Bill. The seminar is free, but the benefit of not making a mistake at the wrong time could be like $10,000, $20,000, $30,000. We'll pay to go to a college so that we get more knowledge, so that we can do better financially. Well, this is another way we could do better financially, by just looking out for what we have.
And this is part of what your mission is.
Yeah.
And to an extent, it's part of what my mission is,
Yeah.
is to educate people. Because again, if you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, and particularly, like we've spent a lot of time talking about in previous radio shows, the challenge is you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know how bad it's going to hurt until you need this paperwork to do the right thing. And if it's not right, you get no do-overs just because of the circumstances. You can't like, oops, I made a mistake. Let me do this,
Yeah, and as I said, a lot of what we do is the crisis end of it. Like in my example, somebody's had a stroke, now they're in the nursing home.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like they're going to be able to come home. They can't do the rehab, and next thing you know, the nursing home's handing you a bill for $13,000.
And I was thinking even about something you said in the first half of the show where you were talking about, because I was asking you the question, I said, well, what if the medical circumstances dictate that mom or dad has to go directly from the hospital into some kind of a skilled nursing facility, but they really don't want that. They want to get home. That's all you've ever heard from them is, I want to be at home. I want to be at home. And didn't know that there was even strategy, perfectly legal, perfectly by the board strategies that would make that possible. But if you don't even know to ask for that, nobody's going to wander in and volunteer that to you.
Correct. Correct. Yeah, and you're kind of on your own to figure it out.
Yeah. So let's go through these. We're going to reserve a little number, a few minutes here at the end of the show, because I want to talk again about our big fundraiser and stuff like that. But I want to make sure that you're getting this information, because I think the time that you've spent with us during your lunch hour here on the Helping Seniors radio show on 90.3 FM, WEJF, I really think if you paid attention to this, this could have meaning of $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 over your lifetime, because hopefully it would keep you from making some mistakes like, well, the kids are just going to get the house, so I'll just deed it over anyway. Or worse, not knowing all available options and how to work those. So you really, if you play, this year we've talked about putting your ducks in a row and don't try this on your own. I'm almost thinking next year we're going to call it, don't be an ostrich. Don't stick, it's so easy to put this stuff off. But you gain so much in your future by taking the time to learn this.
I think I keep cycling back to that Money Magazine article that I read probably now 15 years ago of what people think about when they're retiring.
Yeah.
And one is, can I keep my standard of living going in retirement? And then the second concern is outliving your money.
Yes.
And then way down there, like number 13 or 14, was what happens in a long-term care event.
Yeah, and I was thinking, statistically, what would happen if you looked at it the other way? How often do we need that?
And statistically, you could break it into like quarters.
Yeah.
So there are going to be people who never go to a nursing home. That's about 25% who never need long-term care. Then there's going to be another 25% that will have a very short brush with it, like go to a nursing home for rehab and then back home, and they're off and going. Then there is another 25% that'll be in a facility for a longer period of time, and then there is the real long-term stays, which is the last 25%.
Yeah, but if you just go by the numbers you were just sharing, that means for 1 in 2 of us, this is
it's about 50%.
This is statistically something we need to be really engaged in. And if you happen to be the lucky other half, that's fine, that's great. But there's no harm in planning, right? I mean,
correct. And if you think about it, let's say you've put some money into savings, you got about $200,000, and then your spouse has a stroke, and they're in a nursing home, they're not going to be able to come home,
right?
And you're staring a $13,000 bill in the face.
Yeah.
And you don't have, it could wipe you out very quickly.
Real quick.
And then if your spouse dies, then what are you going to live on in retirement? You just blew through all your money.
Yeah.
So it is definitely worth the time and effort to go consult with somebody like me who does elder law, and find out what your options are and how do you protect your nest egg that you've worked so hard to build.
I'm smiling as you say that about the value of talking to somebody who's got some real experience. Board certified elder law attorney William A. Johnson, Bill Johnson, as we call him, but that's the name of the law firm, William A. Johnson. And the reason I was smiling is because I was thinking, you see these guys show up on national TV, say, oh, you can just do this from the comfort of your computer at home and just, we're legal in all 50 cents. They have no idea of the nuances of what they need to know to get this stuff right, and those things could really come back and bite you if you're not aware of it.
That is true.
Yeah.
That is very true.
So one more time, so again, the date you want to jot down is October 26th. It's a seminar that Bill is leading at one senior place. It's absolutely free. And past that, you will have an opportunity to see about maybe even going over your own personal situation at a later appointment or something with Bill or one of the folks in his office to kind of get a sense of how you could do this the right way. So if they want to sign up, they call one senior place. They call you at
321-253-1667.
And I'm really going to see if we can, see if Nancy and maybe even Karen, because these are the guys who are on front line of the phones. I think they will get so much out of what this is about. So with that, we're going to just shift a gear and remind you today is the last day for you to be able to get your Helping Seniors car raffle tickets and have them mailed directly to your inbox. Imagine pulling open your mailbox tomorrow, Friday, maybe even Saturday, pulling out those tickets, and then just being able to show your ticket stub and stroll right into the museum and skip the lines. Now, again, you can get tickets. Tickets are on sale literally up until 7:30 p.m. The night of the drawing, because I think they set the drawing time is going to be 7:45. So the last ticket sold is 7:30 p.m. both online and in the museum. But the key is save yourself time in line. We've been talking about planning ahead all this show, so why not plan ahead and get your Helping Seniors car raffle tickets today, and that way they get in the mail today and they're on their way to you. So you call 321-473-7770, or you can go to helpingseniors.carraffle.com and get your tickets there. And Bill, like we were talking about at the outset of the show, the winner has a big decision to make Saturday night because they can choose from 5 amazing cars. They all come from AJ Hire's family of dealerships. So AJ has one of just basically every car that matters in town. So it's the Dodge Challenger, which our 2019 winner took, the Chevrolet Camaro, which we've had 2 winners so far take the Chevrolet Camaro. And Bill, you said that's what you're up for this year.
That is, yeah. See, decision made.
Yeah. So we've given away a Kia Sportage. Thus far, we've not given away a Mazda Miata, but this could be the year for that. And then because it's the first year of being in the raffle, AJ's got that Mitsubishi dealership right there on US 1. So guess what? The Mitsubishi Outlander is part of your choice too. But you got to be in it to win it. So you call Nancy or Karen. You get your tickets 321-473-7770. You go to Helping Seniors carraffle.com, get your tickets there. But you don't want to miss this. You don't have to be present to win, by the way. We'll do a Facebook Live. But if you can be there, each ticket is admit one to the museum. And what a fun night that is. First of all, Mark's collection of cars. You can't buy tickets to it, just walk in when you want. It's got to be through an event.
And I did notice this year's event is in the evening.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's 6 p.m. to 9 p.m., and you're entitled to walk around the museum for that whole evening, and you get Mark's brings for some beer, wine, soda, snacks. It's going to be just a fun night. So it's a real pleasant experience to be out there, and you might go home in a new car. So with that, we'll wrap up today's edition of Helping Seniors Radio, and we'll see you Saturday at the American Muscle Car Museum and next Wednesday right back here on 90.3 WEJF.